Well, we had a little false start there. That's fine. That'd be just like our show. All right, here we go. Ba-bow, ba-bow, bow. All right, golf nerds, welcome back to another episode of Swing Thoughts. I'm golf spiritual leader, Humble Howard from the Humble and Fred Show. Coach Tim, golf expert, mental performance guru, coach of the Guelph Griffin golf team. Good to be with you, sir. Always a pleasure to, commiserate. What's that?
Commiserate, golf-wise.
To be with you, Tim, is to know greatness, is to be in the spirit of wonder.
You laid it on thick this morning, pal.
I'm not working off a script, Tim. Just coming out of my brain. Oh, everybody is excited. It's the Postmasters show. We're going to talk all about the amazing play of a couple of golfers. One, Hideki, of course, and the other kid that Tim and I sort of have a weird, circuitous connection to Will Zalatoris. And we'll explain why. This program, of course, brought to you by TaylorMade Golf. Have you been swinging your TaylorMade clubs?
I have, but it's last year's clubs, which is fine. They are amazing clubs, but I am eagerly awaiting the arrival of my new Sim 2 driver, 4-wood actually, and wedges. So,
well, I'm sorry, I'm hesitating here because I got my driver. I haven't hit it yet, but I have hit the 3-wood and the hybrid, and it's very, very good. I don't know how they're doing it, but it's good.
Are you having the same problem as you did last year? Is that this 3-wood goes too gosh darn far?
No, you know what it is? It's not the 3-wood that's surprising anymore, although it goes a long way. It's that little hybrid. I don't know what's in there, but it's. I've hit a couple of shots already this year that I'm like, that was pretty good.
Is it like the Keebler elves? They're just like...
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was thinking. Let me just make sure I got this. Oh, here we go. God, I had it. You know what? It's funny with Zoom and all these meetings, and people listening can relate. They got multiple screens, and I was, trying to find the TaylorMade Canada reads. By the way, of course, the apparel on this program from JW Apparel Inc. Go check out some of the brands that JW is repping, and soon will be representing. Tim,
festooned in,
Yama,
looking that we have sartorial splendor going for us.
See, there you go. Sim 2 irons, TaylorMade, of course, all the new Sim line of clubs, but just want to mention the Sim 2's unique cap back design will give you more forgiveness and more distance more often. Experience the all-new Sim 2 irons from TaylorMade. As always, visit tailormadegolf.ca to learn more. And hopefully you're listening to this podcast to learn more. Today, another unique sort of take on golf and presence and being mindful. Today, we're going to have a chat with a young human, because of course we're so woke on the show. We don't see gender; we just see humans. She's a singer-songwriter and a voice teacher in Guelph. Her name is Laura Bailey. But Tim, she's your singing teacher.
She's my coach. Yeah, absolutely.
Coach.
Yeah.
What does here? And that, of course, everyone's going like, what does singing have to do with me breaking 80?
Lots, and you'll find out. So, just a little story here. So, like a lot of adults, I was, in fact, afraid of singing in public. Great in the car with the windows up, but not so anyone could actually hear me. And the weird part was, too, is that I play in a band. And so I just felt, I need to learn this singing thing. I need to get over it. So I thought, let's take singing lessons. It took me a while to kind of get over that resistance, but I did. And so I started taking lessons with Laura. And what was really interesting to me is that we would get into conversations about how singing and golf and other things of performance, they were so related in terms of the things that we need to work on, the fundamentals, being aware of tension, all those types of things. So it was really interesting. It's really interesting working with Laura about these similarities. And I just thought, this would be fun to have Laura on the show and talk about the connections to performance in golf, singing, and all kinds of things. So welcome to the show, Laura.
Hi,
Thank you so
Laura.
much for having me.
Yeah,
Laura.
so I thought Laura, why don't you just give us a brief kind of view on how where you're at in terms of your singing and songwriting, but and how you got into coaching.
Sure. Well, where am I at in terms of singing and songwriting? I just finished my ARCT diploma with the Royal Conservatory of Music, so I'm a classically trained singer. I wrote and performed in a musical and produced a musical called Clitoria, a sex-positive superhero, at the 2019 Toronto Fringe Festival. And in terms of when I started coaching, I've been coaching for about 7 years now. I started just coaching out of my apartment when I lived in Toronto, and I've been doing it ever since and made a full-time career out of it and sort of never looked back. So I really like that it affords me the opportunities and the time to still do my songwriting and creative projects and things like that. Yeah.
Laura, when Tim first told me that he suggested we get you on the show, I totally was into it because I think there's a lot around how people hold tension in their body that prevents them from opening up vocally, but also opening up, just sort of existentially. What are some of the things, not maybe with Timmy specific, what are some of the things that hold people back when it comes to sort of letting themselves express themselves vocally?
That's a really great question.
I thought so. I really did. I really thought that this is going
to... He is the best.
I really thought halfway through the question, I hope Laura thinks this is a good question.
Great question. When
Thank
I say
you,
that's
Laura.
a great question, I mean, oh my God, what a question. So what are some of the things that hold people back? Well, ultimately, I am of the school of thought that whatever is happening physically in the body is a symptom of something that deeper that's going on. And it could be a sign of something psychologically that's going on. So for example, I work with a lot of women, right? And the first time when I start getting them to do the technique, it's really uncomfortable for them because they start to experience themselves as loud for the first time. And they're not used to hearing their voices as loud. And there are some men also who experience this. Tim is raising his hand, who experienced this sort of like cognitive dissonance as well.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, Laura, because I don't often hear my voice loudly. So
yeah.
Actually, let me do my impression of my girlfriend, my children, and anyone that's ever known me. Just keep it down. You're just loud. Just keep it down. And I'm like, what? Anyway, so at first people find it uncomfortable to hear their voice.
Yes. Yeah, I think at first people, it's interesting because sometimes, and there are men in both camps. I think there are men who are startled by the sound of their own voice. And there are men who are have absolutely no problem expressing themselves boldly and badly right off the top. So there's really a mixed bag with men. But I find, as particularly with women, that there is like this sort of moment that's like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was holding back this much for this long. And I didn't realize how uncomfortable it is to be this loud right now. And I think that there are many ways that that can manifest in terms of physical posture. So part of being quiet or holding back is maybe like hunching forward, not breathing deeply enough, being sort of like misaligned in the body, or having like little nervous like tremors and things like that in your fingers, twiddling your fingers and stuff. all of this is sort of like a physical manifestation of what's really going on, which is trying to sort of hold yourself in some way.
I think what you're talking about in many ways, Laura, is about freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And how in a lot of people, and this was our experience together as coach and student, that I had a hard time letting stuff go. I know that when I'm in my house practicing, if there's anyone else in the house, my volume is way lower.
Yep.
And when there's no one here, then I can let her rip. But Howard, let me throw it to you. As someone who's been a broadcaster for, 4 decades, stand-up comic, all this stuff, this loud person you talk about.
Long time.
There you go. How do you think what Laura's talking about in terms of that perhaps inhibition, how does that reflect itself in tension and golf players maybe not allowing themselves to let themselves go and swing fully and with some degree of freedom?
Well, I think what Laura's talking about in terms of how, and it's interesting that you started with how women release their voices and how it can startle them, because they sometimes hold themselves in. Again, to the surprise of no one. One of my daughters is a singer, and I've been around singing teachers, and I'll tell you later about because I also have a vocal coach. You probably didn't know that, Tim, but I've had one for a long time.
Yeah.
Because talking for a living, oftentimes your throat gets dry and sore. And I've been going to this guy, Aaron Lowe, for a long time. Do you know Aaron?
I do. He's pretty, I mean, I don't know him personally, but he's pretty famous in the vocal world. He's at SLP, I think.
Yeah, but so I'll get to that. Let me put the golf aside. So what Aaron does for people like me and singers and performers is he releases the muscle tension in your voice box. And a couple times, Laura, I've had him come watch me do the show because he wanted to see, to your point, what's my posture like during the show? Am I slumped over? Am I sitting up? Is my mouth open? All those things. And then for a while there, I was having some real trouble, and I would go and he would release. Does these exercises to release the tension here. Because Tim, to your point, whether it's in golf or in performance, we're holding a lot of tension up here. We don't even know it. And Laura, I bet you've had this experience, maybe with Tim or others, where when you release that tension in this whole area, all of a sudden there's a different voice that comes out of people.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because it's a little bit harder to get that result teaching over Zoom. Obviously, like I can't be there in person to be like, no, do this. Like the student sort of has to figure it out on their own. How to get that sort of release. But yes, once you, I always say to my students, it's like, you should feel like a metal tank down here and like you're dead to the world from the neck up. Like you should just be like totally loose up here. Like if there's one thing you take away from these lessons, I want it to be that all of the work is coming from your abdominal muscles, from your pelvic floor. You're going to feel that in your butt. Like the muscles that we use to support our voice are the same muscles we use to poop, to vomit, to blow our nose. Those are the muscles that we're using.
Sometimes at the same time.
Yeah.
The stuff you learn on Swing Thoughts. It is just boundary expanding.
A lot of golfers feel like that on the first tee. Am I going to puke? Am I going to shit myself?
Good thing I'm wearing my brown pants.
That's right.
Well, what greater release could there be? I mean, really.
Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about. To Tim's point about bringing it to golf, Laura. I mean, maybe it's so a lot of golfers are holding tension and they restrict themselves. And so, Tim, I'll throw it back to you. What have you learned from Laura? Maybe you guys can talk about this that you can see would benefit a golfer.
Well, one of the things that Laura and I were constantly, we're on pause here. Our lessons are on pause. That's why I'm going from past tense to present tense. But one of the things that I was aware of is that when I was singing, there was times in which I just couldn't really deliver in a relaxed way. The same thing happens to me in golf all the time. Just like this inability to just kind of let this go. And yeah, it's deep psychological issues. I'm half kidding because there is stuff at work. I've said it before to other people that, I grew up in a chaotic household with a father who didn't do chaos well. So for me, it was really important to just keep it down, be safe. So that's a piece that I've had to work with through my life. But the core thing that Laura and I have worked through is that body awareness, particularly through breathing. And one of the things that we do before at the start of every lesson, and we've done 20 of them, is breathe. Various things. And through doing that, I've started to find myself more relaxed when I sing. I'm still waiting to see how it turns out in golf because it's early in the season. But Laura, why don't you speak to the importance of breath in terms of dealing with tension?
Just before you do, Laura, let me just jump in, Tim, and say, we've talked about breath as it relates to meditation, as it relates to, just being more centered on the golf course. But I think there's a huge connection to that, because a lot of golfers find themselves as chaos reigns, not breathing,
Totally.
not getting oxygen to your brain, not being relaxed in your body, not being able to execute the task. And that would all be, I'm sure, very similar to a singer that's tense about a performance, not being able to access their instrument.
Absolutely. I always say garbage in, garbage out. Like, if you don't take a nice, full, deep singer's breath, if you don't get the diaphragm down, the chances of you being able to execute that note or that phrase properly are very slim. Your singing is your breath, right? In very literally. So the quality of the type of breath you take in is really important. If, for example, it's really important that the breath you take in is silent, not but because then your laryngeal muscles are relaxed, right? And you can actually take that breath in. And I would assume that is the same for golf, because taking those relaxed, silent breaths is part of what calms the central nervous system. Your breath is very much related to your stress hormones, your central nervous system, and all of those things that would apply to any kind of performance, whether it's in singing or in a sport.
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example of that. So, when I was working with Laura, particularly trying to hit higher notes, I would have this anxiousness. And what would typically happen was I would be focused on hitting this higher note. It's like wanting to get the result. It's like wanting a 4-foot putt to go in. So I wouldn't breathe. I would just kind of have this shallow chest breath, and Laura would catch it every time. And so I had to consciously work on, before particularly working on those higher notes, is to do a full belly breath. I'm still working on that because, I'm in my 7th decade. Yes, that old, folks, of breathing a certain way and reacting to stress and anticipatory stress in a certain way. So I have to work at getting my reps in. So it's possible, but it takes work. And that's the thing, what makes this game challenging, is that we've got all these habitual patterns. And to make the changes we want to make, we need to get our reps in at these fundamental things like breathing.
And it's funny, Tim, because a lot of golfers listening to our show, I think a lot of times when we set the table, so to speak, about the topic we're going to attack that day, I think a lot of times, I know if I were listening, I'll be, okay, get to the part where I shave 3 strokes off my round. Okay, what is this?
I'll make my backswing better.
Yeah, no, what do I do now? Do I do something with this woman, and does she make me a better player?
Well, if there's one thing, if I could share something about you, Tim, from our lessons, and this is something that I see a lot in students and singing students, which I think probably applies a lot to golfers as well. It's the sort of banging your head against the wall approach to repetitions, which is like, oh, I didn't get it right. I'll do it again. I'll do it again. I'll do it again. I'll do it again, without taking that breath to reset and be like, okay, what is it that I'm going for in this next rep? Having a breath, a moment, a pause to reset and be intentional about how you're going to do this next.
Absolutely.
Because they say, practice makes permanent. if you keep doing it wrong over and over and over again, that's what your body is going to learn how to do.
But so you watched me do that though. I would have this moment of frustration. I go, okay, I'll get it this time, and go right into it and not pause.
But what Tim was talking about in terms of golfers getting reps in, singers getting reps in, but it's the getting the reps in of taking cleansing breaths. Like, the difference between practice and the game, whether that game is singing or golf, the difference is if you have repped enough of those, like in my pre-shot routine, for years, I take this big breath, and not a wheezy breath, but a really as deeper breath as I can, especially in high, in high stakes situations. I automatically take that breath because I do it all the time. I've made it part of the preparation, the same way that you would do, any practice. Do you know what I'm saying, Timmy? So that the idea is learn to breathe while you're practicing, and learn that part of your routine is to take a breath where you get a chance to kind of get your parasympathetic nervous system to calm down a bit.
Oh, absolutely.
And what I love about what you said there, Laura, about golfers are just so classically banging our heads, like if it's not working, I'll just try harder. When sometimes calming yourself in between the repetitions is more of a better recipe for longer term success.
Yeah, another really tried and true practice technique for singers and for musicians in general is to practice. Like, let's say you've got 3 songs that you're practicing. Try, practicing song A, and then if you mess that up, then go to song C. And if you mess that up, go to song B, and then go back to A, instead of doing A over and over and over and over again, because you need that reset. And also, when it comes to performance, what actually matters is the first time you did it, right? Like, when you're actually going to perform a song, you don't get 3 tries. You get that first try. So it's actually about how you did on the first try. And if you didn't get it, then yes, you can repeat it a little bit. But if you're starting to bang your head against the wall, then go to something else and come back to it. And miraculously, at some point, you will come back to it and it will be perfect, and you will not understand why that happened. And that's one of the magical things.
That's great. I love that.
Well, what I love about that is that in golf, we talk about how can we transition from, say, practice to the actual course. And golfers really struggle with that because they're habituated to, hitting one shot and then it doesn't go off right. So they rake another one off until they hit it, until they thought was right. It's exactly what you're talking about, trying to do it over and over again.
Almost randomization of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But what you're talking about is putting yourself in a performance context so that you're in this space and you're getting used to doing things so as if you are performing rather than being in this practice place. That's the way we sort of shorten the walk from, say, the practice room to the stage, shorten the walk from the practice range to the golf course. That's really cool.
So, Laura, I have to ask, what are Tim's not told me anything. What are the kind of songs that the Tim O'Connor is working on with you? Because I'm thinking, does he come to your place and he pretends he's the Phantom? Is he not a young? Is he doing a young ingenue? Is he Caiaphas from Jesus Christ Superstar? Who is he?
He's definitely like a salt and pepper Johnny Rotten, I would say.
Oh, that's it. I'm going to write that down.
And hopefully 90 pounds lighter.
There you go. A salt and pepper Johnny Rotten. Wow. Well, I can't wait to have. Would you favor us with a little something there, Tim?
Oh, you mean you want me to sing?
just look on your face like horrified. What's funny, Laura? I have people on this show all the time, on this other show that I do, and I've seen that look where I say, "Go ahead, just sing a little tune for us." They're like, "What?"
No, I thought it was going to be me. I was so relieved it was Tim you were talking about.
Laura, I know better than to put you on the spot. I want to put Guelph's Johnny Rotten on the spot.
Well, the only song that I could really do is "Four Strong Winds."
That's all right. But if you want, give us a little bit, just belt out of just a little bit of force. Now here's Tim O'Connor with 4 Strong Winds.
Let's see. Okay, four strong winds will blow lonely. 7 seas will run high. All those things that don't change, come what may.
Beautiful.
Well done.
I'm just amazed I squeaked something. I'm just amazed I squeaked anything out.
You did it great. I have no problem. People could ask me to sing on the middle of a restaurant. I wouldn't care. I'll tell you what is funny about you talking about tension, because I also do stand-up, and I have for years. And I will tell you that there's a real, I don't know about you, Laura, but I have a real sense. If I'm walking on stage, you know, I'm excited and I'm nervous, but I can tell in the first 60 to 90 seconds where I'm at by how much tension I feel in my body. I've said this to you before, Tim. Sometimes I'm up there and I'm like, I'm not really here. Like I'm in my head. And it takes me a few breaths. And that's what I always do. I always kind of pause for a second and just calm down. And then all of a sudden I'm in the room. Because if I'm going too quickly, I'm also forgetting to breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's interesting. So I met Tim through a mutual friend, Haley Kellett, who runs the Making Box. And I know Haley because we both did improv comedy in Toronto for like 10 years together. So I know that feeling. And certainly in improv, when you have no plan, you get on stage and you're just like, like you're just being completely run by adrenaline for the first like 3 years.
Adrenaline and fear.
Yeah, it's like, was that funny?
See, this is about golf.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, before I forget, do you know Amanda Barker?
Oh,
she's a second. She was a producer for us for a long time, Second City. Anyway, but Laura, you're a very nice person.
Thank you. So are you.
Thank you for doing this for us this morning. That's my wrapping up voice.
Yeah.
Yes, I can tell you've had a vocal coach. It sounds very nice.
Oh yeah. You know, I'll tell you though, like every day, you know, I still do some warm-ups and I still can tell, you know, just like you, I can tell when it's going to be a good day. You know, I've had enough rest. You can just feel it. And I have some days, honestly, I have a lot of days. I've been doing this for a long time. I have a lot of days where I'm like, it's a bit squeaky, like I'm a bit tense.
Right.
You know, you slept differently. And I get up early and do it every day early. So.
Yeah. What time do you get up?
Not bad. Like for years when we did the Humble and Fred show on terrestrial radio, I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning. Oof. But now closer between 4:30 and 5:30 some days. Okay. I think we learned a lot, Tim. I think
we did, yeah. And we need to learn one more thing. Laura, where do people find you online? What are the places they go to find you?
You can check out my website, laurabaileymusic.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Laura Bailey Music. And I have a Facebook page, Laura Bailey Music. I don't know when this is coming out, but
it's coming. It'll be out. This will be out in the next 24 hours.
Oh, okay. I have a student show coming up on April 24th, so you can hear my students. But that information will be posted really soon. So, yeah, that's what's
thanks
up.
For doing this for us, Laura. It was very, very nice to have met you. And you've
Thanks,
done
Laura. It was fun. Thanks,
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks. It was a gas.
Just let yourself out of the room. End meeting for Laura. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Weather's good there in the fall.
Now, I hadn't planned to put you on the spot, but I thought, why not?
Yeah, exactly. I knew you would, too.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. So I'm walking down, in all seriousness, I'm walking down the 14th fairway at Blue Springs last night. 4 strong winds will blow lonely. 7 seas will run high.
That's awesome. Well, full disclosure, I was in the shower this morning and I was thinking, well, if she asked me to sing, which one of my many numbers shall I favor her with? All right. The show is brought to you by TaylorMade. As I mentioned, I've hit 2 hybrids, the new Sim 2 hybrids. I've hit 2 of them, including the other day. it's not that it just went far. It just has this kind of. It's just I don't want to get too technical, but there's something that makes the ball just jump off the face.
I think it's the Keeblers. I really do.
I agree. There's something going on in there, but and I'm not saying that the 3-wood doesn't have it, but the hybrid I hit the other day, I've hit 2 of them now in this sort of 225 range. That where they were, it was like when you hit it, that kind of feeling like, oh, that's it. There's golf. There's golf. Oh yeah. Man, I played a round of golf the other day. Honestly, Tim, I was the first 6 holes into the round. The 6th tee shot was the first time I'd hit the face of the club. And the reason I'm not that I was keeping track, but as soon as I did, I went, oh yeah, that's what that feels like. Because I hadn't had it yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was great.
I think we're all familiar with not having the feeling.
Anyway, TaylorMade golf.ca, and of course, Jonathan Wong Apparel is the official clothing sponsor of this legendary podcast, Swing Thoughts. So, shall we talk about expectations?
Sure.
When did you and I attend the Decade seminar? Was that 2017 or 18?
I'm going to go with...
I could tell you.
I'm going to go with 18.
Okay, doesn't matter. It was a couple years ago, and you and I sat in a room with a bunch of punks. We were these 2 old guys at a seminar that our friend Sean Casey put on for his elite amateurs. And I've actually run into some guys that I played with a kid a couple weeks ago. He's like 6'4". He was in that room that day. He's like a +1. And you and I were at a table by ourselves. And I remember looking around like, we're 120 years old. There's not you could take literally you could have taken 4 or 5, anybody in that room, 4 or 5 of them, they weren't as old. They weren't exactly combined as old as we are.
Yeah, I know. This is cool, but the thing is that we were so excited. We were we were like little kids, first day of school type of thing. It was great.
We took this seminar called Decade, and I bring it up now, and we've probably talked about Scott Fawcett from time to time. I've been following him on Twitter, interacting a lot recently, and he's the creator of this. I don't know. It's not a golf method. Have we had him on the show? Did we not?
No, we have not had Scott Fawcett on yet. I'm pretty sure. I mean, this is our 160th show. Yeah. So for old people, it's hard for us to think back through that many shows, but I don't.
Dude, I can't remember. I can't remember who we had on this show. I don't know who. Did we have a guest? Is this the start of the show? Well, I smell toast. Anyway, Fawcett's whole thing is about a course management method for elite players. And when Tim and I took the seminar, one of the players that he had talked about working with was a young kid that he knew his family. And he approached this kid when he was going to play in the U.S. Junior about 6 or 7 years ago. And he said, listen, I'll caddy for you, as the story goes, if you will let me try out this method that I've developed. Scott Fawcett was a aspiring PGA Tour player. Like, he played at the nationwide tour level, an amazing player, but he was also a math nerd. He's got 2 or 3 degrees.
3 math degrees. Yep.
3 math degrees in statistics. And basically what he has done is he's taken Mark Brody's work in the world of strokes gained, and he's applied it as a method to play golf. Anyway, he says to this kid, I'd like to try this method out on you, and if you will do what I say, I'll caddy for you. Anyway, the long story of this is that kid was Will Zalatoris, and Zalatoris has been using Decade for a long time. And without getting into the minutia of it, I know it's already, I've already been talking too long. But
it's okay. Just keep going.
I'm going to. But the idea of course management, and that's when I say you want to talk about expectations. Where to hit it, where to miss it. So what Decade is basically it's a blueprint for, on this hole with these hazards and this pin position, here's where you should statistically hit it for the best chances for the lowest scores. You may comment now, and then I will continue.
Oh, you're just doing great. Don't be self-conscious that you're talking a lot because you're on a great run. You know what? I'll just connect with.
Yes, please connect something while I take a sip of coffee.
There you go.
Collect my many thoughts.
Well, I was thinking, who was it recently that talked about David Duvall going into Q school or something? And it was Robert Dameron who talked about talking with Duvall and said, "What do you do?" He says, what's your course management secret?" He says, "I aim at the middle of every green."
Mm-hmm.
And Dameron went, "That's not true. You're the guy who shot 59 on the PGA Tour. What's your strategy for the greens?" "I aim at the middle of every green," which is a very decade thing.
It is. And in part, and I told you before the show, I've spent, and you know, I'm not exaggerating, close to 10 hours this week on the Decade site, going through the seminar again, the one that you and I took, going through that one and going through the foundational work, because it really is one of these things where Fawcett's point is, if you buy into it, that it will absolutely lower your handicap, whatever your handicap is. Now I signed up under the elite, but you know, I put myself in the handicap 1 to 2, but it's got lessons, and this is where I want to start the discussion with you. It's got such great lessons for all of our handicap golfers listening, whether that's a 12, a 15, an 8, because of some statistic. This is what I love about it. For instance, let me ask you a couple questions. What do you think is the biggest factor in lowering someone's handicap? We'll just take a mid-single digit, someone that shoots between 75 and 78. I know that's pretty good, but if somebody wants to go from a 78 shooter to a 75 shooter, of the things, like most people think, oh, I got to make more birdies. So how much of that improvement, I'm getting to the question, do you think those 3 strokes, how much of that improvement do you think has to do with making more birdies? What's percentage?
I think has nothing to do with making more birdies.
Well, it has some to do, but there's a percentage.
I think it's hitting. I'm hoping I'm interpreting your question right.
No, you already get the decade system, so
I think what you're looking at is, you're asking me, what are the factors that lead to someone
lowering their handicap?
The handicap, I would say, hitting fairways off the tee. That you always have a shot in play. You have as few penalty strokes as possible,
right?
And you hit a shitload of greens.
So it's not about fairways. It's about having a second shot that's not in trouble. So let's imagine. Totally. So a fairway is only 30 yards wide, but there's 60 yards between the hazards, right? If you go on a Google map, which is another thing I've been doing, you go on any golf course and you can look at your first hole and you can see, well, there's fairways only 30 or 40 yards wide, but there's 70 yards that you can effectively hit it in. But here's the thing. In most handicap, whether it's an 80 to a 77, 77 to a 75 and lower, 20% of the improvement comes from one more birdie around. One more birdie around. 80% is what you said. Ball in play, less 3 putts, less penalty shots. Mm-hmm. Now, we've been saying those things because we got them from the seminar a few years ago. But seeing it again and looking at his statistical analysis, it's mind-blowing to me, because I'm thinking, if I'm going to get to scratch one day, I got to make 5 birdies around. You know what the PGA Tour average? The PGA Tour average birdies per round is under 4. It's 3.345. What you're seeing on the PGA Tour, and you've said this, I've said it, it's a false positive. You're watching the best players on the planet having a good week.
That's right.
But the average of the PGA Tour isn't anywhere near as good as we would think it is. And the problem is, and that's why I wanted to talk about expectations with you, Coach, is because a lot of amateurs' expectations are unreal and they affect us psychologically. They're unreal, and they get in our heads because we think we're supposed to hit it closer than we are. Here's another number. From 100 yards on the PGA Tour, and I think we did this one recently, but I've got a couple new ones. From 100 yards on the PGA Tour, their average proximity to the hole is around 20 feet. 20
Wow.
feet. So when we're 100 yards and we sort of maybe block one 35 feet to the right, and we're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm talking about myself now. It's a negative reaction to an unreal expectation. At 150 yards on the PGA Tour, the best players on earth, 30 feet is their average proximity to the hole. Now, of course, we're watching guys on the weekend. That's why we're watching them, who are that week having a great week of ball striking. And they're getting a few breaks. And that's another thing he said. Man, winning is about luck. Having a good score is about luck. And all you can do is mitigate the mental errors and as he said, give the variance a chance to be there, not the variance, the virus. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's saying that if you have a good, solid strategy, you're going to get lucky some days, you're not other days. But if your process is a conservative one, knowing that if you're 165 today on your par 3 and you just barely hit the green, good for you. If you're 45 feet away, you're kind of in average territory for your handicap. So that's what I wanted. That's my opening salvo about the decade experience.
You're sounding like Brandel Chambly. You're throwing all these really interesting numbers. You've done your homework. Well done.
Well,
I think it's
10 hours doing this.
No, you totally geeked out on it. I think that's fantastic.
I could have watched some Netflix, but I decided to do this.
No, that's wonderful stuff. What's really, there's so many things that are interesting in that, but one of the things is if you just really kind of dumb it down, what could be a message we take as mere mortal golfers is to not be so, just like what you said, don't be expecting any kind of perfection. And because golf is just, you can hit a really crappy shot and it bounces off a mound, rolls it, and goes in the hole. You can hit a great putt and it doesn't go in. I mean, you can hit a lousy putt and it goes in. I remember a couple of years ago, just 7th green Blue Springs, and I thought this was a right to left putt. As soon as it leaves the club face, I'm going, oh, crap. Well, it actually went the other way. It went left to right and right in the hole for a birdie. And
I love those when as soon as you hit it, you go, oh, shit, I pulled it in the hole. I meant that. I meant to do that.
Exactly. So, but that's what golf's like. It's like, what was it? Lee Westwood in Bay Hill. He's right there. Hits this great drive. Where's it go? In a divot on the 72nd effing hole. You know what? He's a great player, so divots aren't as big of a challenge as we make them out to be.
But you make a good point that there's so many random aspects that we don't control.
Exactly, and you're so correct about what we see in golf, and so we take this as golf culture, is that we're supposed to do this. Mm-hmm. It's like, but on the PGA Tour with TV, you're watching the guys who are within contention. Corey Connors. He had it going there in the Masters. As soon as he slipped off, you never saw him again.
By the way, I just want to say that when you watch tour players, and this is I think, because I watched last night for the first time since I had, been taking these seminars every day, and I watched the coverage from wherever they are, Sea Island or whatever that tournament is.
Down in
the RBC,
Hilton Head. Yeah,
and I watched their shots. I watched Corey Connors last night when I was watching this, and I watched all the Webb Simpson, and these are some of the biggest names in golf. And I watched where they hit their approach shots. And all of a sudden, I was like, Fawcett's right. Their approach shot, I'm talking about someone last night, 118, Sergio, 118 to the flag, just hit it a little bit too hard, 35 feet. 118. When I have a 118 shot, I have this weird, and I'm mad at myself. I have this weird fantasy that I'm supposed to stuff it. No, you're not. How about get it on the green? Exactly. 118, Sergio, the Masters champion, Sergio Garcia, Simpson, Connors. Connors, a beautiful ball striker, 20 feet, 30 feet. And every once in a while, they either pull it or push it, and it's next to the hole. But I can tell you, I watched 2 hours of golf last night before I fell asleep like an old man, and I just
Exactly. It's when the flies go in and out.
It's such a golf nap. I'm like, I had to do some work last night, so I didn't start watching. I had a golf nap like at 9:45 p.m. I was like, anyway, I watched 2 hours of these guys through a filter of what I've relearned from this decade thing, and you see they hit bad shots. Every once in a while, someone hits it close. That's why you see the highlight. What you don't see is the guy that shot 73 and 70 and 74, hitting shots sideways. The Zalatoris, back to him. I've watched some of what happened this week is Fawcett put out a webinar to those people that follow him on Twitter, which was he said, hey, if you retweet this Brandel Chambly thing, because Chambly made a big thing last weekend about decade. Like he went on and on about
nice.
it. It's a great clip. So Fawcett said, if you retweet this clip, I'll invite you to my webinar. Anyway, so I saw this webinar this week with Fawcett talking about Zalatoris and how the reason Zalatoris was able to perform in those moments is because he and Fawcett have been going over the back nine at Augusta for literally years. What shots to hit, what pins to go after, where to aim. So when he got there on Sunday, he's like, I've kind of been doing this. It's almost like a video game. Sure, you have to be able to execute those shots. Absolutely.
Well, this is great. So sorry, did you have another thought that you wanted to?
I'll finish it, but go ahead.
So one of the core things that great players do is they plan the rounds. And so when you get to a tee, you're not going to be in this place of, oh, well, I just did that, so I should do this. No, the plan is I'm going to hit 3 wood off this tee. And that just calms you down. So when people, think about Zalatoris, like for a lot of people, even though, that U.S. Open finish, was it last year? And
tied for 6, yeah.
Walker Cup, the kid's been around. He's a player. But
he's a gold chip prospect.
Exactly. But to most people in the golf world, he's kind of like, oh, where'd he come from?
Mm-hmm.
So people are wondering, how did he withstand the pressure of the Masters? He was there in the second, third round, fourth round. I would argue that a lot of it was from he knew where he was going to go, and that just diminishes your anxiety.
You had a plan for every hole.
Exactly.
Webb Simpson was being interviewed Monday after the Masters, and another guy that gave a shout out to Fawcett because they asked him about Zalatoris. He said the question was like, why are these young guys, and we think of Webb Simpson as a young guy, but he's been out there for, almost 15 years. The question was, why are these young guys coming out and being able to compete right away? And he said, well, they're better prepared. And he said, and because of things like decade, they already know how to play. They have a way of playing golf courses, even if they're not familiar with them, because there's a decade system for how to play every hole. So, for instance, I'm going to play a qualifier early in May, if golf is still allowed, at Rosedale. I haven't played Rosedale in a long time, and because of what I've learned this week is I'm going to be able to go on Google Earth and take a scorecard, and because of knowing what to look for now, plan out potential shots on every hole that I would hit given the yardage. Because it's not, again, fairways are great, but when you look at I was looking at this map of the golf course, and between the trouble on one side and the trouble on the other side is about 65 or 70 yards, like between the trees and the trees. So yes, we sometimes focus on the fairway, and it kind of, we get a little bit of tension trying to hit a narrow tree line fairway. But if there's 20 yards on either side, you don't have to hit it straight down the middle. He's a big proponent, by the way, of only hitting one shot, only hitting one way.
You meaning like you're either going to draw it or fade it or
but
high
to
or
stick
low
to it.
Yeah.
So that on every hole, you just know I'm going to, if I hit a fade, I'm going to rip it down the left-hand side, knowing that even if it goes horribly wrong, I've got 45 yards to the right from which to play. Here's a thing I'm going to tell you 2 more things. On the PGA Tour, the 8-foot average. So you're 8 feet away. You and I are 8 feet away. We've hit some good, we've hit a good shot, or we've chipped up to 8 feet. 50%.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
Tour average. I say these things not because it's so earth-shattering, but for the average player listening, you're going to go out and play today. Just for the don't beat yourself up part, because when I miss an 8-foot putt, I want to bang. I used to hit myself with my putter.
I know that hurts.
But because I thought, I'm a good player, I'm supposed to sink those. Yeah, sometimes, but probably not 50% of the time. Because, hey, DJ, you're not on the tour.
That's right.
50%, and again, that's why I say it's about expectations. The other thing that he said in one of the very first parts of the course I took this week is he said, stop trying to make birdies. And I was like, what? Stop trying to make birdies. And there's this whole section on when you are trying too hard to sink putts. Your likelihood... So the answer to what am I supposed to do if I'm not trying to make birdies? You're trying to make putts, get around the hole somehow, some way from whatever distance you're putting from. And if they go in, great. What you want to do is give yourself, you talk about capture and speed. He said basically, we often talk about speed versus line. Line is immaterial. It's about the speed. And he's got all these drills about getting the speed correct is so much more important than what your start line is, and et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, a lot of times we are trying too hard to make these putts, and we're giving ourselves stress on the putts coming back, that's what leads to the scores going higher. And I relate to a lot of it, because if you're 20 feet from the hole, you should be trying to leave the putt short. Again, there's a bunch of data that says, you're supposed to hit it 17 inches by. Okay, but on the times you don't and you hit it 36 and 45 inches past, as he said, he said it's a drag if you have a couple of putts that are right in the jaws, you're 1 or 2 inches short versus 5 feet by. He said the difference is you're going to make a lot of those 2 inchers. and you're... He says you're likely going to make a lot of 1 and 2 inch putts, but if you're 4 feet by, again, statistically, on the PGA Tour, they only sink 85% of 4-footers. So what a couple of schmoes like you and I going to do?
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to ask about is, now remember Rotella, he being like the high priest of this whole performance psychology thing, taking issue with the whole piece around trying to hit within, you got a lag putt, you're going to get within a 3-foot circle. And he didn't like that. He said that, no, you should be trying to make the putt. To me, I don't want to get too literal about this, but I think you're trying to make the putt, but you're not like all invested of, please, I need to make a birdie now to stem the bleeding or whatever. To me, there's a healthy, like I'm trying to make this putt, but I'm not trying to gas it. I'm not going to give it a little extra whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean. And I've been thinking a lot about this week, because I'm like, okay, well, am I not supposed to try and make it? What he's trying to say is, and this is, again, his whole thing is based on stats. It's not his opinion. He has got, because of strokes gained on the PGA Tour and the statistics, he knows how many putts from 20 feet, 30 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, if you leave them a little bit short versus leaving them by. He has worked with this kid, Aaron Wise, and in one of the videos, he's got Aaron hitting 20 putts from about 20 feet. And then he shows you statistically the ones that went by versus the ones that were short. And he talks about shifting your dispersion or your patterns. And I know from myself, like the way he puts it is, you want the putt to miss ultimately, at a pace of about, if it misses, it goes by 16 or 17 inches. But what I thought that was, and this could be, maybe others felt like this too. I always putted with the idea that I was going to, if I was going to miss, it was going to go by the hole. But as he said, you want to putt so that it's dying as it gets to the hole, and
Agreed.
And then it goes by 16 or 17 inches, but it's slowing down. Whereas a lot of my 3-putts, and maybe others too, my ball is still accelerating at the hole. It isn't slowing down until after the hole, which is why sometimes I miss it 3 and 4 and 5 feet. And it was like a light bulb for me, because I have, in terms of my quest for scratch, I thought I needed to make 6 birdies a round, but I shot last weekend. I shot 70, or last week I shot 74 with a couple of 3-putts, but I made 4 birdies, so it kind of offset it. But then the next day I shot 78 and I 3-putted 4 times, no birdies that day. And a lot of my 3-putts are because I had this idea that leaving it short was the worst thing you could do. And he says in this seminar, learn to leave them short, because when you do, yes, they didn't get to the. He shows a shot. He shows Aaron Wise's, shots around the hole. He said all these ones at 3, 4, and 5 feet. Most of us, those are tough comebackers. Yeah, it's a drag that the ones that were a foot or 2 short didn't quite get there. But guess what? Soft pars and soft bogeys don't kill you.
Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with the idea of learn to leave it short. I think what he's, could I sort of reframe that as, let's make a nice putt. And if it happens to go in, great.
Yeah. Well, I watched last night, and you would be surprised, once you know what to look for, how many of their putts, especially putts of length, they are leaving just short. Or
that's what I'm thinking about.
Or the putts are slowing. They're really slow at the hole. Because I got to tell you, Timmer, that was a huge revelation for me in terms of how I'm trying to putt these. Because I am giving it way too much because listen, the other day I played, I 3-putted from 18 feet. Like, it wasn't that tough a putt. Yeah. The problem is I made a good putt. Like, the ball came off my putter nicely, but it was an uphill, so I gave it a little extra, and then I had a 4-footer curling coming down the hill and missed it. I would have been so much better off than to just, cozy it up somehow. And if it went in, great. If not, tap it in and go on. Because those are strokes that all of us at every level can mitigate.
Yeah, what a fascinating topic this is. I love this, and I want to go deeper on this because I started doing I've been engaged by a financial management company to do online putting webinars, and I love doing them because you and I have talked about the whole retinal after image thing and using our eyes and quiet eyes. And I've called it this quiet mind thing. And it's really been fun. And what I'm connecting that to is, so the last couple of summers, I've putted the best I have in my whole life. And I'm not really, when I'm looking at a putt, I'm not thinking whether it's uphill or downhill. I'm just looking at the putt and I let my body react to it. And what's interesting is that most of the time on longer putts, I'm coming up just a little bit short.
Yeah.
It's just the ball is just coming up there, and so if I leave anywhere from a 25-footer to onward, leave just a little bit short for a tap in, that's great.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I gotta make this, or don't leave it short so people don't say, hey, Alice, or
no, I know.
Any of that nonsense.
When you've got a 40-foot, like once you get past 30 feet or 33 feet, I think it is on the PGA Tour, where you're as likely to sink it as you are to 3-putt it. There's an inflection point where it starts to go the other way. So for us amateurs, probably it's at the 25-foot or the 22-foot. My point is, the ones that I 3-putt, you're going to 3-putt a 50-foot putt most of the time. If you get it within, that's another thing. I've got a 50-footer and I'm thinking, I got to cozy it right up there. The facts are at 40, 50, and 60 feet. If you get it within 5 or 6 or 7 feet, you've done your best, right?
Yeah, and that's great stuff. And so what I would say to our listeners, if you're interested in this stuff, Decade is great, a little expensive,
Yeah, it is.
But I think a great place to start would be to get the Mark Brody book, Every Shot Counts,
Yeah.
because all those stats that Howard you've been saying about, that's right in that book. All those stats, like the PGA Tour players from 8 feet, they make 50%.
Yeah.
And when you're able to read that, it gives you a sense of, oh, maybe I'm not as awful as I thought it was.
Well, and that's why I gave it the title Expectations, because I played the other day and I was just kind of thinking about this and sort of maneuvering my way around the golf course. I did not hit it very well. And I had an okay score, but I was really thinking about, because one of the assignments in the course was just go out and notice, start looking around the size of the landing areas on your golf course. Because as I say, we're all so focused with, that sliver of fairway. One of the toughest holes in the country is number 10 at Blue Springs. And it is. It just is a tough. I told you last time I played a little tournament there at the end of the season, and I hit 3-wood off the tee, and I was so excited that I hit the fairway. I wanted to take a picture of myself and send it to you. I was just, but like, there's a hole that, and again, back to Brody's book and strokes gained, which Fawcett is he loves that guy. But if you make a 5 on that hole, you've lost no strokes gained to the rest of the schmoes you play with.
Absolutely. That's so cool. So that speaks to another thing you can do for yourself, is to create a personal par on Blue Springs, number 10. That's a personal par of 5 for me. And the same with number 8, because it's just a really difficult hole.
Very difficult hole. Exactly.
So, but that's such an interesting way that you spun it. And that's why you're a tournament player, is you're giving up no strokes to the field if you make a 5 on either of those holes. So that's a great thing, folks, is you make the par on the card really in some ways is kind of arbitrary.
I love that.
It really doesn't matter that whether you made a 4 on hole number 8 or on your golf course. It's like, what does it add up at the end?
100%. And I would say that, yeah, it's important if you want to play tournament golf. But I would say if you're playing, and again, those are 2 great examples. 8 at Blue Springs is a very difficult hole. And as I've mentioned, 10 is a tough hole. But it's not just because in the decade system, you could put in your 5 on that hole and it would tell you how that would compare to the, a tour player. And I will, I'll just finish by saying the concept of losing a stroke to par, and I love that word you use, is such an arbitrary mental thing, because you think, oh shit, I've made a bogey, now I'm 1 over. Really, you haven't made a bogey. What you've probably made is you've lost a half. Maybe, let's just say for the sake of this conversation, it really is only a half shot, because most people, the average player on Blue Springs today, isn't making 4. If you've made 5, you've probably lost no strokes gained. But if you make a 6, now you've lost, so let's say you make a 5 and it's a 0.5 loss. But if you make a 6, it's a 1.5. If you make a 7, it's a 2.5.
Yeah.
So the point of this discussion is to make bogey and give yourself a thumbs up.
Well, you know what? I was making, I played yesterday. I got to the golf course. The temperature on my car said 5.
Mm-hmm.
and it was a bit windy, and there was rain in the forecast. Well, I was making some bogeys, and then it was like, okay, it's probably about 4 degrees. The ball is going through the rain. I can't feel my hands. But hey, you know what? I can't let this.
I love that though. What's the par on that hole? I can't feel my fingers. That's the par.
Exactly. I wanted to ask, in context of what we're talking about, what did you think when Hideki, I think, had a 4-stroke lead on 15?
Yeah.
On Sunday, and he pulls out the 4-iron. I was thinking, okay, if I'm your caddy, what's the and Hideki asked me, what's the shot here? Wedge. No,
Yeah.
really, seriously, what's the shot here? Wedge. I just thought, okay, the guy is this close to winning his first major. Oh, indeed, and winning it for his country.
Oh yeah, mind blowing.
All this stuff, the adrenaline of being there, and I'm not sure if he pulled it a bit or he just like super nuked it under the circumstances. I I would have thought you hit wedge,
Hmm.
and and some people will argue 15 is still hard to hit even with a
No,
wedge
but
in your
I would
hand.
agree
But
with
what
you.
do you think?
Well, I was going to tell you in the sort of nerd, the decade geek world that I'm part of, everyone said that. They said, the third shot when you lay up there is no bargain, but it's easier than the shot you're going to have to the green from the back of that. You could have hit wedge to the fat part of the green, because I will say this though, I thought it was, very, very smart of him to. I don't think people realize he laid up on that chip.
He did, exactly. That's what Trevor Immelman was saying.
Yeah, he laid up, and that was a
Yeah.
smart thing to do. Let's talk.
Interesting. Laid up wedge, laid up chip shot. You don't hear that every day.
Well, because the only way he could lose it is if that ball hit the green. If it hit the green and with any momentum, it's in the water again. Now he's lost it. Where I would just like to finish is the shot that everyone's been discussing is Xander Schauffele. You see, there's a perfect example of, too aggressive a target that has no room for any error. And maybe he said he hit it well. There's been, some of the discussion was, well, he couldn't hit it that well. But basically, if you're aiming aggressively and a bit of wind comes up or you're a millimeter off the sweet spot, it doesn't quite fly. And if he had been a little less aggressive in his target, I mean, he could have put some pressure on. But that was, to me, I thought that was that was a big mistake for a professional to make.
I thought the same thing. And who knows? I mean, what a situation to be in. Schauffele said he flushed it. And, I so he goes, nah, he hit that fat, or whatever. But, I was really surprised by that, because that Sunday pin placement is not a hard one. That's one of the easier ones at Augusta, because, you get hole in ones and stuff. It's so exciting. That's why they have it there. And they like birdies on the
oh yeah, and
at Augusta.
That's a great point. They put it there for a reason, to give that on. It's sort of the last opportunity, if you're in contention, to sneak one in there. And it would have been, who knows if he had not made 6. You know what I mean? It's like, try and make 4. He would have, put some pressure on him.
Yeah, that was, and some, I don't know, on another note, I don't know. I had a couple of people say, well, that wasn't a very interesting Masters. I said, well, I don't know what you watched. I was rooting hard for Matsuyama. He's just such a decent guy. And, that whole thing about winning for your country, we went through that with Mike Weir in 2003. Oh, yeah. So, and I just love that bit when his caddy, when he took the flag off the stick and then he just bowed to the hole. That was beautiful. I just thought that was amazing.
That sort of sums up what the game is. I think for a lot of us, him just taking his hat off and bowing slightly, and you want to talk about a world of gratitude to be where you are. I just thought, what a moment. And again, one of those things, for years they'll be showing the Tiger chip on 16 and the Phil jumping up or whatever. They'll be showing that image for years, that image of just that slight moment of grace,
Yeah, it was beautiful. And I think, what a nice reminder, I think, at the beginning of the golf season for a lot of our listeners who are in Canada and the Northeast, at least. Yeah, it's a blessing to be able to play, particularly during a pandemic. So everyone, okay, when you're done your round, folks, go home. Don't hang around in the parking lot, drink beer.
I don't know about that. There's some really, we're in some tough times here, man. I've heard some rumors. I don't want to be finish the show in a bummer, but I've heard some rumors that we may not be. They may actually have to make a decision about golf courses.
Yeah, well, so far we've been good, but I will admit, so it was last week. I think they announced the lockdown, And
we're in
so
the second week of the lockdown. Yeah.
yeah, so there's all this messaging. Hey, folks, stay at home for the sake of humanity. Stay safe. Except if you have a tea time.
I know it's a strange thing. It's like stay at home, but go golfing. Those are your two choices. Thank you to singing coach Laura Bailey. Thanks to JW Apparel, and thanks to TaylorMade Golf. Experience the drives every golfer wants to hit and no golfer wants to follow with the all-new Sim 2 driver only from TaylorMade. TaylorMadeGolf.ca, O'ConnorGolf.ca, HumbleandFredRadio.com, and we'll see you next week.
Check out Guitar John.